Michael Bennett died because of me. Adrian Cole said my brother's name so quietly that, for one impossible second, I thought the storm had whispered it through the walls. I stood barefoot in the doorway of his library, my hand still resting on the brass handle, unable to breathe. It was 3:07 in the morning. Snow pressed against the windows overlooking Lake Michigan, turning the world beyond the glass into a blank white silence. The fire had burned down to a faint red glow. Adrian sat alone in a leather chair, dressed in a white shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows, looking nothing like the man Chicago feared. During the day, people waited for his permission before they spoke. Doors opened before he reached them. Men twice his size lowered their eyes when he entered a room. But that night, his shoulders were bent, his hair had fallen across his forehead, and one hand was closed around a broken piece of glass that had left a thin red line across his palm. I should have stepped away. I should have pretended I had heard nothing. I had only been living at the Cole estate for 11 days, hired as a private duty nurse after exhaustion finally forced Adrian into a hospital bed. My instructions had been simple. Monitor his blood pressure. Make sure he ate. Convince him to sleep. The last task had proven impossible. Every night, sometime after midnight, I heard his footsteps crossing the second floor. Slow, measured, always ending in the library. That night, the footsteps had been followed by breaking glass. What did you say? My voice barely carried across the room. Adrian lifted his head. His gray eyes found mine, and the change in his expression was immediate. The grief disappeared behind the calm mask he wore like armor. You should be asleep, Claire. So should you. He looked down at his hand. On the rug beside him lay the broken frame of an old photograph. I moved closer despite every instinct warning me not to. 3 people stood in the picture. Adrian looked younger, almost happy. Beside him was a dark-haired woman I recognized as his late sister, Emily. The third person's face had been torn away. Only one hand remained visible at the edge of the photograph. A silver ring circled the man's finger. My knees nearly gave out. I knew that ring. I had watched my brother wear it every day after our father died. Michael once told me it was the only thing our family owned that time could not take away. Where did you get this? I asked. Adrian did not answer. The clock on the mantel clicked once, loud as a warning. That was Michael's ring. His jaw tightened. Claire, you knew my brother. It was not a question anymore. Outside, the wind struck the windows. Inside, the most powerful man in Chicago looked at me as though I had finally opened the door he had spent 8 years trying to keep closed. Yes, he said. I knew him. My fingers went cold. Michael had disappeared 8 years earlier. The police told us his car had gone through the ice during a winter storm. No body had ever been recovered. No explanation had ever made sense. Adrian slowly placed the ring on the table between us. Your brother trusted me, he said. His voice broke on the final word. And on the night he needed me most, I chose my empire instead. For several seconds, I could hear only the clock. Each click landed between us like a question Adrian did not want to answer. I stared at the silver ring on the table, remembering how Michael used to turn it around his finger whenever he was worried. He had done it the morning he disappeared. I had been 19, standing in our kitchen with a cup of coffee gone cold between my hands, asking why he looked as though he had not slept. He smiled, touched my shoulder, and told me he had one final problem to solve. Then he left. He never came home. Start at the beginning, I said. Adrian leaned back in the chair, but there was no ease in the movement. Michael worked for me. The words made the room feel smaller. Doing what? He handled information. Financial records. Names. Patterns most people never notice until it is too late. You mean he was part of your organization? Adrian met my eyes. Yes. I wanted to reject it. Michael had packed my lunches when our mother worked double shifts. He had taught me how to change a tire. He had spent 3 weeks repairing the porch of our old house because we could not afford a contractor. That man did not belong in Adrian Cole's world. He told me he worked in private security. That was not entirely a lie. Do not protect him with careful words. My voice shook, and I hated that Adrian heard it. He lied to me for years. He was trying to keep you separate from this life. And you helped him? Adrian looked toward the dark windows. Snow moved across the glass in white sheets, hiding the lake beyond the estate. At first, there was something in the pause that made my stomach tighten. I stepped closer to the table. What changed? He picked up the damaged photograph, but did not look at it. 8 years ago, Michael came to me with a warning. He believed someone inside my organization was selling private information to people who wanted control of the city. Did you believe him? No. The answer came without hesitation. That honesty hurt more than an excuse would have. Why not? Adrian's thumb moved over the torn edge where Michael's face should have been. Because the man he accused had raised me after my father died. Vincent Hale built the walls around this family. He taught me whom to trust and whom to fear. Michael asked me to believe that everything I knew about loyalty was wrong. So you chose Vincent. I chose certainty. No. I folded my arms against the cold spreading through me. You chose the person who made you feel powerful. Adrian looked at me then. There was no anger in his face. Only recognition. Yes. The admission silenced me. He placed the photograph down with careful hands. Michael was ordered to leave the estate before midnight. There was a storm coming in from the lake. He asked for 10 minutes to show me the proof. I gave him none. I saw my brother at our kitchen door again, his coat half-buttoned, snow beginning to fall behind him. I had spent 8 years imagining mechanical failure, black ice, and bad luck. Now another possibility stood in front of me, wearing a white shirt and my brother's regret in his eyes. His car was found the next morning, Adrian continued. It had gone through the ice near the northern shoreline. There was blood inside, but no body. The police said the current carried him away. That is what they were instructed to say. My breath caught. By whom? Adrian looked toward the doorway as footsteps moved somewhere in the hall, slow and distant. Then he lowered his voice. By the same man Michael warned me about. The footsteps stopped outside the library. Adrian's expression changed before the door opened. The grief vanished. His shoulders straightened, and the man who ruled half the city returned as if someone had pulled a curtain across his face. Daniel Reed appeared in the doorway wearing a dark sweater and an expression that told me he had heard enough to understand the danger. The northern road is closed, he said. State police turned back every vehicle near Sheridan Road. Adrian nodded once. And Vincent? Still in the East Wing. My eyes moved between them. Vincent Hale is here? Neither man answered quickly enough. Anger rose through me, hot and clean. The person Michael warned you about is sleeping under the same roof as me? He arrived yesterday afternoon for a private board meeting, Adrian said. He was supposed to return to New York before nightfall. The storm closed the roads before his driver could leave. And he does not know who I am. I did not believe he did. The uncertainty in Adrian's answer frightened me more than confidence would have. Then why did you bring me here? Because you were the best nurse available. That answer might have worked yesterday. I turned toward the hall. Adrian stood. Claire, do not leave this room. I looked back at him. You do not get to give me orders after admitting that your decisions helped bury my brother's life. His face tightened, but he did not move closer. The storm has covered the road with almost 12 inches of snow. Your car will not make it past the gate. Then Daniel can drive me. Daniel glanced at Adrian, and that small movement told me everything. Even kindness in this house required permission. No, I said quietly. I will not become another person who waits for Adrian Cole to decide what happens to her. I walked out before either of them could answer. The hall stretched ahead beneath dim wall. Lamps, silent except for the wind pressing against the old windows. I passed the staircase and reached the guest wing, where the rooms stood behind identical white doors. My hands were shaking when I entered mine. I pulled on jeans, boots, and the thickest coat I had brought. I packed my bag in less than 2 minutes. Then I heard the clock in the downstairs foyer strike 3:30. The sound carried through the estate like a warning. I opened my door and found Daniel waiting several feet away. He did not block the hall. I will not stop you, he said. But the gate is nearly half a mile from here, and the wind chill is below zero. Was Michael kept in this wing? Daniel's eyes shifted toward the last door on the left. That was answer enough. I walked past him and entered the room. Dustless shelves lined the walls. A narrow bed stood beneath a window facing the frozen lake. Adrian had preserved the room exactly as Michael left it, either out of guilt or because changing anything would have made the loss permanent. Nothing looked personal until I noticed an old paperback on the nightstand. The cover was faded, the spine bent from use. Michael had owned the same edition of The Great Gatsby. He used to read it every summer and argue that everyone misunderstood the ending. I opened the book. Several words had been underlined in pencil. At first, they seemed random. Then I noticed small numbers written beside them. Page numbers. A sequence. My pulse quickened as I copied the marked words onto the back of an envelope. Vincent knows about Claire. The room tilted around me. Behind me, Daniel drew a slow breath. Adrian said Vincent did not know who I was. Daniel's silence felt heavier than a lie. I turned, holding the message between us. How long has he known? A floorboard creaked in the dark hallway. Someone had been standing outside long enough to hear his name. Then a calm, older voice answered before Daniel could speak. Longer than Adrian would ever dare tell you. Vincent Hale stood beneath the hallway light in a charcoal robe, his silver hair neatly combed, as if he had not just stepped out of bed at 3:30 in the morning. He looked nothing like the monster my imagination had created. That frightened me more. His face was calm. His voice was warm. The kind of voice people trusted before they understood the price. Daniel moved between us without raising his hands. You should return to your room. Vincent smiled, still pretending she is only the nurse. My fingers tightened around the envelope. You knew Michael. His eyes settled on me with careful interest. Your brother was intelligent. Too intelligent for his own peace. Did you order the police report changed? Claire. Adrian's voice came from behind Vincent. He had followed us from the library, but his attention was fixed entirely on the older man. The air in the hallway seemed to narrow around them. Vincent turned with no sign of surprise. You finally told her. Go back to the East Wing, Adrian said. That is not a request. Vincent studied him for a moment, then looked at me again. Ask Adrian why Michael confessed. My heartbeat stumbled. Confessed to what? Adrian's jaw tightened. Vincent, she deserves the whole truth. The softness in Vincent's voice felt rehearsed. He was not answering my questions. He was selecting the truth that would hurt Adrian most. Michael admitted that he had passed private records outside the organization, Vincent continued. He provided names, dates, and locations. He signed a statement. I looked at Adrian. Is that true? He did not answer fast enough. Vincent gave a quiet sigh, almost sympathetic. Your brother was not removed because of a rumor. He was removed because he confessed. Leave, Adrian said. This time, Daniel opened the nearest door and waited. Vincent walked away without resistance, but before disappearing into the East Wing, he glanced back at me. People do strange things when someone they love is threatened. The door closed behind him. Silence rushed into the hall. I turned on Adrian. What did he mean? Adrian looked at the message in my hand. Michael did confess. Then why did he leave this? I held up the envelope. Why warn you about Vincent if he was guilty? Adrian stepped into Michael's old room and closed the door. Daniel remained outside. 3 days before the storm, Vincent gave Michael a photograph. Of what? Adrian's eyes met mine. You. The word struck with more force than any shout. You were leaving a nursing class near Northwestern University. The photograph had the time, the date, and your home address written on the back. My throat went dry. Michael understood the message. Adrian continued carefully. Vincent wanted access to financial records Michael had discovered. When Michael refused, Vincent made it clear that you could be drawn into our world. So Michael confessed. He created evidence against himself and surrendered every level of access he had. Once he was expelled, threatening you could no longer force him to open the records Vincent wanted. Michael made himself useless as leverage. I sat on the edge of the bed because my legs no longer trusted me. All those years, I had believed Michael disappeared because he had secrets. I had never imagined that I was the reason he carried them alone. He made you hate him to protect me. Adrian looked toward the frozen window. Yes. And you believed the confession. His voice lowered. I wanted to. The honesty cut deeper than denial. Because if Michael was innocent, then Vincent was guilty. And you could not face that. No, Adrian placed the silver ring beside the old book. I chose the man who raised me over the man who told me the truth. I stared at the underlined message, then at the torn photograph, then at the ring my brother had worn the last morning I saw him. One question rose above everything else. If Michael confessed to save me, why was there no body in the car? Adrian went completely still. Outside the room, Daniel's phone began to ring. Daniel answered on the second ring. Read. His voice was low, but the silence in the room made every word clear. He listened for several seconds, then looked at Adrian. Something in his face changed. Not fear. Recognition. Send it now, he said, and do not contact anyone else. He ended the call and stepped into the room with his phone in hand. The report from the lake was altered. Adrian went still. How? A retired county clerk contacted me 3 months ago after recognizing Michael's case number in an old storage index. I have been tracing the original documents since then. Tonight, one of our investigators found the recovery log archived under a different number. Daniel opened a photograph on the screen and placed the phone on the bed beside me. I leaned closer. The image showed Michael's car half covered in ice near the northern shoreline. The date in the corner matched the night he disappeared. Beneath it was a typed report. The driver's compartment was empty. No remains were recovered. The blood sample was insufficient for a positive identification. Personal effects were placed inside the vehicle after recovery. I read the final sentence twice. Placed inside after recovery? Daniel nodded. The ring, the coat, and Michael's wallet were added to the evidence list nearly 6 hours after the car was pulled from the lake. Adrian picked up the phone. His expression became unreadable. Who signed the transfer? A deputy named Thomas Avery. He retired 7 years ago and died last month. The fire had nearly gone out, but heat rose under my skin. Then someone wanted everyone to believe Michael had been inside that car. Yes, Daniel said. And someone made certain there was nothing left to question. Adrian turned toward the window. Beyond the glass, the storm erased the shoreline where my brother had supposedly vanished. Michael knew Vincent was watching him, he said. He may have staged the car himself. Then he survived. The words left me before hope could make them dangerous. Adrian did not answer. Daniel opened another file. There is more. An insurance investigator printed an image from a toll camera before the original case was sealed. It shows a pickup truck heading north 40 minutes after the estimated time of the crash. Who owned it? I asked. The license plate was registered to a shell company Michael formed through a former business associate. The company closed the following week. My breath caught. For 8 years, I had carried grief like a stone inside my chest. Now that stone shifted, and the space beneath it hurt even more. If he escaped, why did he never come back? Adrian looked at me with an expression I could not name. Because coming back would have led Vincent to you. Or because he no longer trusted you. Adrian accepted the words without defending himself. That made them feel sharper. Daniel's phone rang again. The screen showed no caller information. He looked at Adrian before answering and switched to speaker. At first, there was only static. Then a man's voice came through, distorted but calm. Stop looking for Michael Bennett. Every muscle in my body tightened. Adrian stepped closer to the phone. Who is this? The voice ignored him. Claire was protected because she knew nothing. That protection ends if you continue. The call disconnected. No one moved. Snow struck the windows in soft, relentless waves. Daniel immediately began tracing the signal, but Adrian was watching me. Not like a nurse. Not like a responsibility. Like the promise he had failed once and refused to fail again. You are leaving at first light, he said. Fear moved through me. Not the kind that made me want to run, but the kind that showed me what running from the truth had already cost my family. No, Claire. My brother gave up his name to protect me. I will not honor that by walking away from the truth. Adrian's jaw tightened. This is not a negotiation. I stood and faced him. Then you have learned nothing. The clock in the hallway reached 4. For the first time since I had entered his house, Adrian Cole had no answer. Daniel looked up from his phone. The signal did not enter through an outside tower. His eyes moved toward the east wing. The call was routed through a device inside the estate. Adrian moved before anyone else. He crossed the hallway and closed the bedroom door, then spoke to Daniel in a voice so controlled that it made the entire house seem to listen. Lock the exterior gates. Shut down every private line. No one leaves the estate until we know who made that call. Daniel nodded and reached for his phone. I stepped between them. No. Adrian looked at me as if he had misheard. Claire, this is not the time. It is exactly the time. You do not get to lock every door, hide every file, and call it protection. Someone inside this house threatened you. And your answer is to control me instead of trusting me. His eyes hardened. My answer is to keep you alive. Michael tried that. He kept me ignorant, and it cost him his name, his home, and 8 years of his life. The words echoed through the small room. Daniel lowered his phone, but said nothing. Adrian stood less than 6 feet away, yet the distance between us felt wider than the frozen lake outside. You are not Michael, he said. No, I am the person he sacrificed everything to protect. That means I have more right to the truth than anyone in this house. Adrian glanced at the message I still held. Vincent knows about Claire. For words my brother had hidden inside an old book because he trusted paper more than powerful men. I placed the envelope on the desk. I want every record connected to Michael. Every report involving Vincent. Every payment linked to the Lake investigation. I want the security logs and the communications records from this estate. Those files are protected. So was Vincent. Adrian's expression shifted. Only slightly, but I saw it. The truth had found the one place his authority could not defend. Daniel cleared his throat. She is right. Adrian turned toward him. Daniel did not look away. We have spent 8 years filtering every question through people Vincent selected. If someone inside the estate is monitoring the search, Claire may notice what we have missed. She is a nurse, Adrian said. I am standing right here, I replied. And nurses notice patterns. We notice the detail everyone else dismisses because it does not fit the story they already believe. The room went quiet. Snow brushed the window in soft waves. Somewhere downstairs, a lock clicked into place. Adrian looked at the ring on the nightstand, then at the old book, then finally at me. I expected another order. Instead, he removed a black key card from his wallet and placed it in my palm. This opens the archive beneath the library. Daniel stared at him. Adrian, give her access to Michael's case, Vincent's financial records, the Lake investigation, and tonight's security logs. The card felt cold against my skin. It was a small object, no heavier than a credit card, but I understood what it meant. Adrian Cole had built his life around locked rooms. Now he was opening the one that held the truth he feared most. Stay beside Daniel, he said. Do not open anything unrelated to Michael. That is advice, I told him, not an order. For the first time, the corner of his mouth moved with something almost like respect. Advice, then. We returned to the library while the storm slowly thinned beyond the windows. Daniel entered a code behind a shelf, and part of the wall opened silently. Cold air rose from a narrow staircase. At the bottom waited a steel door and rows of sealed files. I used Adrian's card. The lock flashed green. The physical folder bearing Michael's name contained bank transfers, photographs, and copies of the false confession. Daniel checked the electronic case record beside it. The access log showed that Adrian's credentials had opened Michael's digital file 3 days before I arrived at the estate. I looked up at him. His face had gone completely still. I did not access that record, he said. Then a light blinked on the archive terminal. An encrypted remote connection opened for less than a second, and a message appeared across the screen. Claire has the key now. Ask her what Michael left behind. The message disappeared before Daniel could touch the keyboard. For 1 second, the screen reflected all 3 of us in the dim archive light. Daniel looked angry. Adrian looked afraid. I had never imagined fear could exist so quietly on his face. What did Michael leave behind? Adrian asked. I stared at the empty screen. I do not know. Daniel began tracing the remote connection, but I turned toward the physical files. Michael had always hidden important things inside ordinary ones. Birthday cards, grocery lists, books no one thought to open twice. I searched the folder until I found a plain envelope sealed beneath the false confession. My name was written across the front in Michael's handwriting. Claire. Just Claire. My hand stopped working. Adrian reached toward the envelope, then pulled his hand back before touching it. Open it, he said. Inside was a small brass key and a note with one sentence. Ask Adrian about the promise. I looked up. The silence between us changed. Daniel stepped away from the table. I will check the security logs and search the east wing for the relay device. He left without waiting for permission. Adrian did not stop him. What promise? I asked. Adrian stared at the note as though he had spent 8 years hoping it would never be found. The night Michael came to warn me, he asked for one thing. My safety. More than that. He moved toward the shelves, putting distance between us. He asked me to make sure you finished school. To keep your mother's house from being taken. To protect your life without bringing you into mine. Memories returned in fragments. The hospital bill that had been reduced without explanation. The anonymous scholarship during my final year of nursing school. The bank that suddenly approved an extension when my mother fell behind on the mortgage. I had called them miracles because the alternative was believing someone had been watching. That was you. Adrian nodded. For 8 years. Yes. My chest tightened. You knew where I lived. Where I worked. You knew I became a nurse. Yes. And when I was hired here. That was not an accident. The truth landed softly, which made it worse. You brought me into this house after promising Michael that you would keep me away from your world. I arranged the position because your mother's medical debt had become unmanageable. Vincent had been living in New York for almost a year. He was not expected to return to this estate. But he did. He called the board meeting without warning and arrived yesterday afternoon. By the time I learned he was staying overnight, the storm had already closed the roads. You still took the risk. Yes. He did not hide behind an excuse. I convinced myself that I could control every variable. I was wrong. Anger rose inside me, but it could not find a simple place to land. Adrian had lied. He had also protected us when no one else came. Both truths stood in the room together. Why did you keep helping us after you believed Michael was dead? I asked. Adrian lifted his eyes. Because every payment reminded me that. He had been right about me. The archive lights hummed above us. I could control the city, he continued. But I could not undo one decision. I could not give you your brother back. I could only make certain my failure did not take the rest of your life too. I looked at the brass key in my palm. You do not get forgiveness because you paid bills in secret. I know. You do not get to call surveillance protection. I know. Then what do you want from me? Adrian stood completely still. For once, there was no command in his voice. No power. No expectation. Nothing, he said. I only want you to know that Michael did not disappear without leaving someone behind who remembered his promise. The clock above the archive door reached 5:42. I closed my fingers around the key. What does this open? Adrian looked toward the darkest shelf in the room. A locked compartment Michael registered in my private archive 3 days before the storm. The locked compartment was hidden behind the darkest shelf, inside a narrow steel cabinet Daniel had never opened. The brass key turned with a soft click. Adrian opened the door, but he did not reach inside. He stepped back and let me do it. There was only one item. A small digital recorder wrapped in a handkerchief I recognized from childhood. Blue cotton. White stitching. Michael used to carry it in his coat pocket because our mother had made it for him. My hands trembled as I pressed the button. Static filled the archive. Then my brother's voice entered the room. Older than I remembered. Tired. Still unmistakably his. Claire, if you are hearing this, then Adrian finally chose the truth. I covered my mouth. Adrian turned away, but not before I saw his eyes close. Michael continued. I am alive. I stayed gone because Vincent could only use you if he could connect you to me. I allowed him to believe I had vanished, and I allowed Adrian to believe he had failed me. I am sorry for both. The recording paused, followed by the sound of a door shutting somewhere far away. Vincent kept records outside Chicago. Shipping accounts. Private payments. Names protected by people who never expected anyone to look twice. I have spent 8 years collecting enough evidence to remove him without leaving another family trapped beneath his promises. I looked at Adrian. Where is he? Adrian shook his head. The recorder clicked again. I kept a secure alert connected to the archive account. When Claire's access card opened Michael Bennett's file, I sent the message to the terminal. No one inside the estate helped me. The brass key opens more than this compartment. Take it to St. Matthew's Church in Evanston. 3rd row. Left side. Look beneath the seat marked with a small cross. The message ended. Daniel returned several minutes later carrying a device no larger than a deck of cards. I found this behind the communications panel in Vincent's sitting room, he said. It routed the warning call through the estate network. I also found a copied version of Adrian's access credentials. Vincent opened Michael's electronic file 3 days before Claire arrived. The remaining mysteries settled into place. Vincent had known I was coming. Michael had known when I entered the archive. Each man had been waiting to see what Adrian would choose. By the time the sun rose, the storm had weakened and road crews had cleared a narrow route north. We left in a black sport utility vehicle, with Daniel driving and Adrian beside him. No one spoke during the 20-mile ride. The city looked pale beneath the snow, every street carrying the strange stillness that comes after a night no one understands. St. Matthew's was nearly empty. An elderly caretaker stood near the entrance as if he had been expecting us. When I showed him the key, he led us to the 3rd row. Beneath the seat marked with a carved cross was a brass tag bearing a cabinet number. The caretaker unlocked a secure cabinet in the parish office and handed me a folded map and a second key. Your brother asked me to keep these until you came in person, he said. The map led us to a lakeside cabin 6 miles north. Smoke rose from the chimney when we arrived. My heart began to pound before the door opened. Michael stood on the porch. His hair was touched with gray. His face was thinner, but his eyes were exactly the same. I forgot Adrian. I forgot the cold. I crossed the yard and stopped only when Michael whispered my name. Then 8 years disappeared. He held me as though he had been carrying the same grief from the opposite side. I am sorry, he said. I know. It was not forgiveness. Not yet. But it was enough to keep breathing. Michael explained that the cabin was only a meeting point. He had changed the final location after receiving the alert that I had entered the archive. He could not risk leading Vincent to the place where he had actually lived. Adrian waited near the vehicle until Michael looked past me. The two men faced each other across the snow. No anger. No performance. Only the weight of everything neither had repaired. Michael walked closer. Why did you keep her safe after you believed I was dead? Adrian answered without looking away. Because it was the only promise I had left that still made me human. Michael studied him for a long moment, then held out a thick envelope. This contains the original ledgers and the chain of records proving where they came from. Copies have already been secured with independent counsel. Adrian accepted it carefully. What do you want in return? Vincent scheduled an emergency board vote for noon. He plans to move the remaining accounts beyond your control and leave the country tonight. Michael looked at me, then back at the man who had once chosen power over trust. This time, choose the truth before certainty costs someone else their future. Vincent was brought to the library when we returned to the estate. Daniel had kept him in the East Wing under supervision after discovering the relay device and the copied credentials. He entered wearing a dark suit, one hand adjusting his cuff as if the morning were proceeding exactly as planned. Then he saw Michael. For the first time in 8 years, Vincent Hale lost control of his expression. It lasted less than a second, but I saw it. Surprise. Then fear. Adrian entered behind us with the envelope in his hand. You taught me loyalty, he said. You never taught me the difference between loyalty and obedience. Vincent looked at Michael as if he were studying a ghost. You built your life around a misunderstanding. No, Michael replied. You built his life around one. Daniel placed copies of the records across the table. Bank transfers, false reports, private accounts, the original recovery log, proof that Vincent had copied Adrian's credentials and routed the warning call through the estate. Every secret he had protected with silence now sat beneath the morning light. Vincent did not surrender easily. He questioned the records. He claimed Michael had manufactured them during 8 years in hiding. He spoke of broken chains of custody, disloyal employees, and enemies who wanted the coal companies divided. Michael waited until he finished. Every ledger has a matching bank record, he said. Every bank record has been independently authenticated. Copies were delivered to outside counsel before I agreed to come here. Destroying what is on this table will change nothing. Vincent turned to Adrian. I protected this family when you were too young to understand what protection required. Adrian listened without interrupting. That silence unsettled Vincent more than anger could have. You protected your authority, Adrian finally said. You used my grief to make obedience feel like loyalty. Vincent's voice hardened. Everything you have exists because I built it. Then I will accept the cost of dismantling what should never have been built. Adrian canceled the emergency board vote, froze Vincent's access to every legitimate company, and removed him from all positions connected to the coal organization. Through independent attorneys, Adrian delivered the evidence to federal investigators, entered a formal cooperation agreement, and agreed to accept the legal consequences attached to his own decisions. There was no spectacle, no threat, only doors closing one by one until Vincent had no authority left to hide behind. Michael stayed with me through the spring. Forgiveness did not arrive in one beautiful moment. It came slowly, over coffee that went cold while we talked, during long drives beside the lake, in the quiet space between questions he could answer and the ones he could not. Adrian never asked me to defend him. He never asked Michael to forget. Over the next 6 months, he separated the family's legitimate companies from the network Vincent had built through fear and secrecy. Daniel took control of the businesses that could operate honestly. The others were dissolved under legal supervision. Adrian created a foundation in Emily Cole and Michael Bennett's names to help families displaced by organized crime and corruption. He never put his own name on the building. By August, Michael moved to Oregon to begin again under his real identity. At the airport, he hugged me for a long time, then looked toward Adrian, who stood several yards away. "Do not make her carry your guilt," Michael told him. Adrian nodded. "I will not." I finished my contract, returned to the hospital, and told Adrian I needed space to understand what remained between us. He gave it without argument. He did not call unexpectedly. He did not send gifts. Once each month, Daniel mailed me the progress report I had requested, listing the companies closed, employees transferred to lawful work, restitution funds established, and conditions of Adrian's cooperation agreement. Adrian changed even when I was not there to witness it. That mattered more than any promise. 3 months later, I visited the estate on the first night that Snow returned to Chicago. At 3:07 in the morning, I woke in the guest room and listened. No footsteps crossed the hall. No glass broke. The house remained still. I found Adrian asleep on the sofa near the library window, one hand resting beside the restored photograph of him, Emily, and Michael. No face had been torn away. The silver ring lay beside it, polished but unchanged. I covered Adrian with a blanket. His eyes opened for a moment. "You came back," he whispered. "I came to see whether you had learned how to sleep." A tired smile touched his face. "I am learning." Then he closed his eyes again, trusting the silence for the first time. The night he confessed, I thought Adrian Cole was asking me to forgive him. I had been wrong. He was asking for permission to become someone worth forgiving.